Imagine standing before one of the most decisive moments in human history, in a world still warm from the absence of the man who had changed everything. The desert remained the same. The wind still dragged sand across tents, walls, and newly raised mosques. But something invisible had broken. The Prophet Muhammad was dead, and with his death, it was not only a religious leader that disappeared. The center of gravity of a new civilization vanished with him. The question that remained was not merely who would rule. The question was far more dangerous. Who had the right to inherit the soul of Islam? What happened next would not be a simple succession dispute. It would be the decision that divided Islam forever. Today, when you hear the words Sunni and Shia, you may think of modern conflicts, sectarian rivalries, wars in the Middle East, or political divisions stretching across borders. But this fracture did not begin with modern states, oil, or contemporary revolutions. It was born in a moment of grief, uncertainty, and ambition, when the Muslim community was still too young to endure the loss of its founder without breaking from within. What was at stake was not only power. It was legitimacy, blood, revelation, justice, and destiny. It was the question that has haunted empires since the beginning of time. Should power belong to the most capable or to the most legitimate? To understand that, you must return to the year 632. Arabia had been transformed in just a few decades. Tribes once fragmented now revolved around a shared faith. Islam was no longer merely a spiritual message born in the sands of Mecca and Medina. It was already a political, military, and civilizational force in expansion. And at the center of this transformation stood Muhammad, not only as prophet, but as judge, leader, mediator, commander, and symbol of unity. His presence held together alliances that, without him, might never have remained intact. And then, suddenly, he dies. Without a universally uncontested successor clearly imposed for all, the community finds itself on the edge of a choice that would change centuries. You can almost feel the weight of that hour, the shock, the fear, the urgency. Men gathered, voices tense, eyes filled with disbelief, each one understanding that the void left by Muhammad would not remain empty for long. Power hates a vacuum, and empires are born or die according to how quickly someone fills it. It was in this climate that, at Saqifah, leaders of the community gathered to decide who should lead the Muslims. And there, under the pressure of the moment, the first answer emerged. Abu Bakr, a close companion of Muhammad and one of the earliest converts, was chosen as caliph. For many, this was a pragmatic decision, necessary, even inevitable. The community needed stability. It needed order. It needed continuity. But not everyone saw it as continuity. For others, that choice already carried the mark of rupture. Because there was a man who, in the eyes of many, was not merely close to the Prophet, but part of his own house, his own blood, his own spiritual light. That man was Ali ibn Abi Talib, Muhammad's cousin and son-in-law. Brave in battle, respected for his wisdom, and deeply bound to the Prophet, Ali represented more than a political alternative. For those who would later be called Shia, Ali was the rightful heir, the man who should succeed Muhammad not only by merit, but by sacred right. And here the division begins to take shape. On one side, those who defended the choice of the community. On the other, those who saw leadership as inseparable from the Prophet's family. At first, this division did not yet have the final form it would later acquire. The rigid blocks did not yet exist, nor fully systematized theologies, nor centuries of wounded memory. There was tension, resentment, divergence, but there was still a contested world, not a consolidated schism. Abu Bakr ruled for a short time, followed by Umar and then Uthman. Under them, Islam expanded with astonishing speed. Arab armies emerged from the peninsula and crushed ancient empires. Persian and Byzantine territories were absorbed with a force that seemed almost supernatural. But while the empire expanded outward, its fractures expanded inward. The crisis exploded under Uthman. Accusations of family favoritism, unrest in the provinces, and political tensions began to corrode the unity of the community. The aging caliph became the target of rising anger. And then came the unthinkable. Uthman was assassinated. With his blood, it was not only a ruler who fell, it was the very image of unity that began to rot. After his death, Ali finally assumed the caliphate. But what should have been the restoration of legitimacy became civil war. Because his opponents would not simply move on. They demanded revenge, justice, reckoning. And in the early Islamic world, politics and morality were already impossible to separate. From that moment on, the community plunged into fitna, an Arabic word heavy with meaning, signifying trial, discord, internal war. It was both a spiritual and political fracture. Ali faced powerful opponents, including Aisha, Muhammad's widow, and later Muawiya, governor of Syria and relative of Uthman. The battles that followed were not merely armed confrontations. They were clashes over the very nature of authority in Islam. Every sword raised on the battlefield also cut into the future memory of the religion. Every drop of blood made it harder to turn back. The conflict was no longer only about governing. It was about defining who could speak in the name of truth. Then came Karbala, and there the division ceased to be merely political and became sacred, emotional, eternal. After Ali's death, his son Hassan yielded under complex circumstances. Later, power passed to Yazid, son of Muawiya, consolidating a dynastic logic that many considered intolerable. And then Husayn, son of Ali and grandson of Muhammad, refused to swear loyalty. He moved forward with a small group, knowing he was surrounded by vastly larger forces. At Karbala, in the year 680, Husayn was massacred. Not merely defeated, massacred. His death did not become only a historical episode. It became an open wound in the Shia soul. The moment moment when injustice stopped being theory and took the face of a sacred martyr. That is why the Sunni-Shia schism cannot be understood as merely a disagreement over succession. It is a dispute between two profound visions of authority. For the Sunni tradition, the community and its consensus played a central role in the legitimacy of the first caliphs. For the Shia tradition, true leadership could not be left only to political choice, because it required spiritual proximity and lineage to the Prophet. It was not merely a matter of administration. It was a matter of sacred light, rightful guidance, and divine justice. And when Husayn fell at Karbala, this difference gained a language of blood, mourning, and redemption. Over the centuries, this division deepened. Distinct theologies took shape. Rituals, memories, and separate identities became solidified. Empires adopted one side or the other. Dynasties turned this fracture into a banner of war and an instrument of the state. What began with a hurried decision in the shadow of Muhammad's death became one of the most enduring forces in Islamic history. And even today, echoes of that moment still reverberate from Iraq to Iran, from Lebanon to the Gulf, from religious memory to the harshest geopolitical struggles of the present. But perhaps the most powerful part of this story is realizing that it all began with a question that seemed simple and never was. Who should succeed the Prophet? Behind that question stood another, much deeper one. Who has the right to define the true path when the founder is no longer among the living? The answer was never unanimous, and perhaps it never could have been. Because when religion, power, blood, and destiny meet at the same point, division ceases to be merely human. It becomes sacred memory, and that is exactly what happened. Islam survived, expanded, and shaped civilizations, but it never became one again, because a decision made in the heat of urgency divided not only a community, but the future of an entire faith.